So this video is the event itself, the fully charged live Saturday and Sunday from Austin, Texas. I will do the road trip video next, but I wanted to bring the various highlights of the event, look at some of the pros and cons of where it was held and what we saw down there, as well as just kind of walk through some of the exhibits.
Incredible the number of people that have come from across Texas, out of state, driven in electric vehicles down from places like Vancouver, flown in from all around the world. It really is testimony to the fact that there is some demand, we think, for electric vehicles and for clean energy.
Panel to open it up that was just very, very Tesla centric. You know, they were predicting a lot of legacy OEMs going bust in the next 2 or 3 years. It's just, you know, there were prognostications of doom were overblown, and you know, Tesla is ahead clearly, but to claim that they are, you know, a decade ahead and nobody can ever catch them up and everybody else is going to go bust was fanboying to a extreme that was not productive, I don't think. We also had Electrify America, obviously, very big display there. They were, you know, answering questions. Still, you know, no real resolution to the questions of Kia Hyundai model pricing and pushing them up into price tier 2. But they, you know, they obviously were there proud to talk about their rollout. They'd got to just before 400 stations going live at that point, so they've achieved that since then, and we're ramping up to 500 now across the USA. So people were on talks there. One of the interesting things I thought was mentioned was why they don't have solar canopies or covers of any kind, especially in, you know, here in the Northeast we get all manner of weather, so we're fighting the snow and the rain for a decent portion of the year. But that was partially explained away by the fact that they have to get a separate permitting for that kind of installation. So they've been focused 100% on just rolling out the network. The last 12-18 months it's accelerated faster than any network. They've really pushed hard on that, potentially to the detriment of reliability in some cases. So, you know, to the extent that these things could be covered and have better amenities, they are, you know, what they are. They've got the stations in the ground, they've got the equipment up and running. But they did mention that it was future-proofed, so they can have, you know, canopies and things installed at those sites. There's a lot of flexibility to make improvements to all of the sites. But they're getting there, they're working on it, and you know, there's signs for the future that some of the infrastructure and amenities at these places could improve. So beyond Electrify America, there were a bunch of vendors, you know, people in energy companies, accessories for Tesla, Oscar and Hamish being the most notable kind of swanky British style there, which was frunk luggage, which was a category that didn't exist 5 years ago, I would guess, or 10 years ago at least. Beyond that, yeah, lots of conversions. EV West was there, who a lot of people know about, you know, converting vehicles out in California. A company called Moment Motors, who had some pretty, you know, interesting ways to put electric conversions into different parts of the car. There was, I think it was Undecided by Matt Ferrell. I'll link to the video. Did a really good recap of Fully Charged, which was, you know, a lot of it was Moment Motors being interviewed, and there's some good information in there on how they put the car together and try and respect its, you know, whilst getting a battery into it and converting it to electric power, still respecting the balance of the car, the original design aesthetic, and trying to integrate all that stuff into classic cars to give them a second life. So that was fun. You could walk the thing in about an hour and a half if you had a test drive or two. You know, there's some e-bikes there. It was fun to punt around. Obviously food trucks, that kind of thing, music. So it was a lot, you know, there's a lot going on, but probably one day was all you really needed, maybe even, you know, half a day, a bit more than half a day. I think there was a good amount there for the size in the first one, but they'll definitely want to look for either a bigger venue or just more happening on the ground. They had a lot of the parking lot that you know, the vehicles were on show, where it would have been nice to have more test drives running, a little bit more information. They're just, by virtue of there being so many more vendors next year, hopefully, and you'd hope to see Volkswagen there with the ID4, you'd hope to see Ford promoting the Mustang Mach-E, you know, Porsche, the Taycan was there, but it was very, you know, there were people talking about it, but it wasn't a whole lot of, you know, the fact that it was there was the biggest draw. There wasn't a lot of information, and there was certainly no test drives going on. But again, early in the lifetime of that vehicle, so maybe we can put it down to that. The Harley Livewire was a couple of those on display, and people could sit on it, rev that, you know, rev as much as you can rev an electric motorbike. But that made a lot of noise, which kind of cut into the panelists on the main stage, which was a little distracting. You know, obviously made for a key kind of soundtrack to the show, but maybe you don't want that cutting into your panelists' opinions and points. Rivian front and center with the R1S and the R1T. They had the biggest tent by far, really, and certainly getting the most attention just by virtue of where they were, but also because these, you know, are so much vehicles are so much anticipated in truck and lesser extent the SUV form. There were the Audi E-Tron was also not too far from there. You know, the test drives were a decent part of it, and I got to go in a small little circuit round there. We had Chevy doing a pretty good job, actually, you know, only obviously before the EV day announcements, so they really only had the 2020 Bolt EV to promote. They were bizarrely pushing the Energy Assist app as well, which in my experience hasn't been very reliable and has been difficult to really plan a trip with. But they have been touting the new improved version of that with more data, real-time feeds, ability to kind of track the car's battery status as you go along and change in real-time conditions. I still have my, you know, pretty big asterisk on the top of that it's, you know, user beware. Make sure you have a backup plan as well, because there are plenty of things in the app that don't work quite as they should, in my experience. So, you know, that was an interesting thing that they obviously place value on that, but I don't think it's quite ready for prime time as yet, or at least as much as they're saying. But they did talks. They, you know, talked about fast charging. They talked about the Bolt's battery, the design of the vehicle. So there were experts on hand and people willing to talk about the car, which was a little more than Audi had, I think. But, you know, both, just by being there, they made their presence known and got to talk about the car, so that was a positive, certainly. Ford Mustang Mach-E was not there. That was one of the ones I had hoped to see, but that just didn't make the list. Obviously, it was too soon for them, being the start of February and only having released it in mid-November, so they're probably still gearing up for all the auto shows this year. No big deal. Hope to see it maybe in New York, if that isn't cancelled due to coronavirus. Inside the hall, we had a bunch of presentations going on. You know, saw a lot of those. There were some interesting news and views. Yeah, it's the mileage there is your interest in the subject. So there were plenty that I'll link to down in the show notes. Just some of the more interesting ones. Sean Mitchell had a really good balanced presentation on Tesla killer symmetry, and you know, the kind of foolishness of wheeling out that term Tesla killer. every time there is a new EV in town. You know, there's a lot of really motivated, passionate people in the EV community, and I think aside from a little bit of over tribalism at times, it was you know, a very communal, collegial event that did a lot to show people, you know, we'll support these cars, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a big wave coming, transitioning to electric vehicles, and I think we'll be very glad that we're here at Fully Charged Live, the first one in the USA at least, and part of that initial movement to get things catalyzed. So thank you to all the people who, you know, we stopped to say hello at the event. It was great to talk to people who'd even watched videos on the channel, which was a big surprise. You know, it's just nice to know that this is getting out there and helping a few people here and there. The kind of feeling seemed to be that they will stay in Texas for the main event next year, but there could be offshoot events on the East Coast, West Coast, maybe up in Canada. So that would be good to see. You know, it's I'm glad I did the drive, and that'll be, you know, you'll see it coming up. It was by and large a very, very successful drive, but it was a long way to go. You know, if I had an option on the East Coast or up in Canada, I would certainly avail myself of that. And yeah, just a big thank you really to everyone who put in the time and work to organize it. I look forward to seeing you at future events, and hopefully next February, whether it's Texas or early next year somewhere else, Fully Charged USA #2. Thanks for watching, thanks for stopping if you did, and saying hello, and we'll see you on the next one. Look forward to the road trip video. Ta-ta.